So let's talk a little bit about how we get to the nomination. And you can see we got a question from a Facebook participant asking why some states have caucuses and others have primaries, and wanting to know what the difference is. And I know you've probably all heard about the Iowa caucuses. It's the first thing that took place, and then it's followed up by the New Hampshire primaries. So what's the difference between those and why?
Well, essentially a caucus would almost be like what we're doing right now, where on the election night, the group of people in a particular neighborhood or community would come together at an appointed time at 6:30. They would get in a room, they'll close the door, and then everyone decides, okay, who's for which candidate? Are you for Mitt Romney or Santorum? And you go, literally in Iowa's case, you will go into different corners and count off who's for whom. And then at some point, you will try to persuade your neighbor to come over to my side. And so it's a very intimate process, and this takes place all across the state. Whereas a primary is just like a normal election day, where you go to your ballot station, you tick off who you want to vote for, and you cast your ballot. Practically, that changes how you, if you're a candidate, how you campaign. And so in a primary situation, you're really just trying to hit as many people as possible. And so, the television ads, and it's all about getting out your vote on election night. With the caucus, it's in some ways it's much more intimate, because yes, you want 10,000 people to show up, but frankly, you're focusing just as much on, can we get 50 people in the Upper East Side of Manhattan to show up in this room, not just say with a primary, you have between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. to vote anytime during the day, but can you actually get the 50 people to show up at 6:30 p.m. on a specific night and support you, and actually sit in front of their friends and their neighbors and publicly show who you support? And so that takes us a higher level of engagement and commitment and connection. And so you find with the Iowa caucuses that we've just seen the Republicans go through, you see people who a year or two later are presidents of the United States and flying around in the big plane and all that, where they're showing up with dinner and a gallon of milk to someone's house, hoping that they'll get 5 of their friends to go to a caucus, because that's what really matters. Whereas if you're in the California primary, you're running your ads, and it's just a much larger situation. In general, and actually you are seeing this right now, even now that Mitt Romney is really the presumptive Republican, where Ron Paul, who's one of the, well, until I think yesterday when he said he would no longer travel, he is still getting support in these caucus states, because they're his diehard supporters. So even if you can get 5 of your people in a room, that can make a difference, and you can compete for the vote.
Sort of related to that, you just said the presumptive nominee, it's an add-on question, but what do people need to get the nomination of their party?
Right. So in August, and I want to say the Democratic convention is in September. That's when the parties formally select their nominees, and you need delegates pledged. So let's say that everybody here is 100% of the Republican delegates for the convention. Mitt Romney needs to make sure that he gets 50% plus 1, at least, of the delegates to that convention to be the official nominee. In modern times, it really has been almost a rubber stamp. By the time you get to your convention, the person who's in the lead has far more delegates, so that it really isn't an issue. However, even, I want to say, at least on the Democratic side, the last truly contested convention was when President Kennedy was running for the nomination. And he still didn't quite have enough delegates at his convention to secure the nomination, and so there was still horse trading going on behind, they used to call it the smoke-filled rooms, where, you know, you're saying, well, can you give, you know, what can you give Lyndon Johnson to get his support, or what can you give whoever someone else had that may have had a few delegates to where it was really a battle. Now, that said, this issue can actually defeat sitting presidents. In 1976, Ronald Reagan challenged President Gerald Ford. Now, Ronald Reagan probably knew that he wasn't going to defeat a sitting president, Gerald Ford, for the actual nomination, but he was able to get enough support and kick up enough dust that, you know, to have a sitting president show up at his own convention, which really should just be kind of a party and a coronation, actually having to listen to someone else who opposes you, give a speech, and get some acclamation, it kind of deflates who the president is. Later in 1980, Ted Kennedy challenged President Jimmy Carter, and so it just sets the tone of the race. That again, when you're trying to go after those swing voters, and they're sitting back saying, "Well,
Your own party won't accept you."
exactly. What's wrong with you if your own party doesn't like you, or you know, you expect the president to look sort of strong, and they're over here doing kind of political horse trading? That can help influence an election.